Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome freshmen as well. Great to have you here. This is Newman Night. We have Mass, if you're here for that, at 5:30. We had food from La Fonda, and then different speakers each week. Because the idea is, now that we're in college, we're in a different place than we were a year ago. 4 years ago. And there's a lot of things out there, so how do we continue to grow in our search for truth, who is a person, Jesus Christ? And so we try to bring in different speakers that help open up our minds, get us thinking about things in a different way. So tonight, I'm excited to introduce my friend, Father John Parks. He's been a priest over 8 years, has been in some different parishes. But most recently, the bishop recognized that there's nothing more important than an invitation to know Christ. And so his whole job is to help us as a diocese, as a people of God, be reminded about what's most important. And so that's why I invited him to come tonight to talk to us about helping us to come fully to life. Statues come into life. So please help me welcome Father Parks.
Good evening. I'm Father Parks. I'm a Catholic priest of the Diocese of Phoenix. And as Father Matt said, I've been a priest for just over 8 years. It's a great joy to see all of you. Why don't you pray? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father, we thank you for the gift of this day, the gift of faith. We ask that you would send your Holy Spirit upon us, that you would anoint the words that I would speak, that you prepare our hearts to receive the message, that we might come to know you in a more profound way. And we ask this, Jesus, through your most holy name. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. This talk is based on a quote that comes from a book called Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Home crowd. All right. And in it he says this: the world is a great sculptor's shop. We are the statues. There's a rumor going around the shop that some of us are someday going to come to life. So that's what being a Christian is like. It's like we're all sculptures. There's a rumor going around that some of us are going to come to life. So tonight I wanted to talk about happiness and virtue and love and how those things all fit together. It's going to be kind of a cursory overview, and then we'll give you time to ask any questions if you have any questions. Okay. So there's this boy, and he's walking the streets of Italy, and as he's walking the streets of Italy, he comes upon the greatest sculptor of his time. And the sculptor is standing there, he's holding his chisel in his hand, and he's looking at this huge white block of marble. And he has like this glint in his eye. He's just staring. And so the boy sees that, he doesn't think much of it, so he goes away. Then a few months later, he comes back, and this time he sees that same sculptor, but now he's not looking at a block, he's actually chipping away at the paw of this ferocious white lion, made out of white marble. And the boy runs up, he's like astonished. So he looks at the white marble lion, he looks at the sculptor, looks at the lion, looks at the sculptor, and then he says to him, "How did you know that lion was in that block?" So Aristotle began, our friend Aristotle. One guy did. Okay. Philosophy major? Are you going to minor in unemployment? That's a joke. That's a joke. You can always drive an Uber. That's a joke, you guys. I love philosophy. That's why I can make that joke, because I love philosophy. So Aristotle said, he started all morality with one question, which is this: what do you want? What do you want? And then if you would ask anybody what they wanted, like if I were to ask anyone, what do you want? Yes?
I guess I want to be happy.
Well, that was really easy. That's the right answer. We didn't even plan that. Like, I thought you said that you'll leave me alone. No, I don't want to leave me alone. And then we finally get to, because I don't want to get a restraining order. Why do you want to get a restraining order? And then finally we get to, because I want to be happy. But you just went right there. The talk is over. No, that's not true. That's exactly right. So Aristotle says, if you ask somebody, what do you want? They would always give the same answer eventually, which is they want to be happy. And the Greek word is eudaimonia, that's the word in Greek, which can be defined as human flourishing or joy in living life well. So human flourishing or joy in living life well. It's not something fleeting or passing. It's not like going to an amusement park for a day. It's that I'm living the type of life that I'm finding a freedom and joy because I'm doing the thing I was created to be. And so, how do you do that? Well, Aristotle says you be virtuous. That's who you be the kind of thing you are. So it might be helpful to note at this time, we have a false notion of freedom today, and that's this idea that freedom is license, that I'm most free when people are just leaving me alone. It's just all about rights. Leave me alone. My body, my choice, let me do what I want with my stuff, just leave me alone. It's a free country, right? While there's an ancient tradition that roots right into the Christian faith, which is that you're most free when you're doing the thing you were created to do. Does that make sense? So when is a train most free? When it's on its tracks. When is the sunflower most free? When it's following the sun. When it's doing the thing it was created to do. And if a sunflower thought, for too long I've been under the tyranny of the sun, so I'm just going to look down. Well then, it's no longer a sunflower, it's a dumb flower. And it's going to die. Because the sun hates it? No, because it just cut itself off from its own life source. Another name for sunflower is heliotrope. Helios is the Greek word for sun, like heliocentrism, right? And trope is like to turn. We call it like a sun turn. So its dumb yellow face just follows the sun, right? That's what's created to do. Okay, so you follow that, something's most free when it's doing the thing it was created to do. Jesus says all who sin are exercising their freedom. And Jesus says all who sin are enslaved to sin, right? You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free, right? Okay. So Aristotle says if you want to be free, you want to become virtuous, which is you want to live according to reason. Now, what is virtue? Virtue is a firm and habitual disposition to the good. So how do you get better at virtue? Well, the moral virtues, you get better at doing them by doing them. So Aristotle said this, you get better at playing the harp by playing the harp. You know also that? Captain Obvious. Thanks, Aristotle. Philosophy major. Okay. Right, so you get better by doing it. And here's the crazy part. If you do it over and over and over and over and over and over again, it becomes in some ways easy. It becomes easy to practice virtue in your life. So for instance, let's say like I'm a really just guy, and I'm walking over today, and I just see some cash on the floor. I just see some cash right there. Maybe I see somebody drop some cash. And then I think, well, I know what I want to do right now. I want to cover with my foot. And I want to just pretend like I was standing here. Then I want to assess the situation. What are we dealing with here? $10, okay. Now, if I hold on to that money and I think about like all the things I can spend it on, like, ooh, Chick-fil-A. Because I'm a Christian. Anyway. Amen. So, if I think about all the things I want with my money, and then eventually, finally, I just like, it's so difficult, but I was like, all right, somebody dropped $10, who wants it? That was you, here you go, you're welcome. Right? Then I'm not virtuous, right? Because it's not easy. So virtue is a firm and habitual disposition to good. I choose things over and over again, they become easier, and then I begin to master myself. Y'all follow that? So I think this is kind of, so the Catechism says this, the virtuous man is he who freely practices the good, right? It's easy for him. And the moral virtues are acquired by human effort. I also think this is fun. It's kind of like a boomerang. I thought this was helpful when somebody explained this to me. Like when you commit an action, it shows something about you. Like, so like it's like a boomerang coming out of you. And then of course, what does a boomerang do? It comes back to you. And so then it habituates you. It makes you more like that thing. So if I tell a lie, it reveals something about me, and then it comes back to me, and it makes me a little easier to lie the next time. You follow that? So I can set it out like lie, tell the truth, tell the truth, and then eventually I become that type of person. Aristotle says this is so powerful that you become what you habitually are, that for this person, when the person who's so used to telling the truth, when they come to like a huge moment in their life and they can either tell the truth or not tell the truth, he said in some sense, the decision's already been made. Because they've so conditioned themselves to tell the truth that they're just going to do it. It's kind of an astonishing thing. I don't know who you think is like the best basketball player in the world, but like, let's say you think it's Steph Curry. I don't know, okay, whatever. You know, like the way that guy plays basketball is so amazing. Like the Saints lived lives the way that he plays basketball. Like just watching them, it was like a work of art. It was like amazing. And so Pope Benedict says that we as Christians need to teach the world again the art of living, which would be the virtuous life. So I want to say real quick about the four moral virtues. There are four of them. They're also called the cardinal virtues because they come from a Latin word meaning hinge, because they're literally pivotal to the moral life. So the first one is prudence. This is the literal definition. The virtue, I'm going to read it in a British accent. The virtue that disposes practical reason, the virtue that disposes practical reason to discern our true good in every circumstance and to choose the right means of achieving it. Or St. Thomas Aquinas says it's right reason in action. But he says prudence is directly linked to another virtue, which is wisdom, which is I seek everything to its final end. You know, I want to remember that for later. So a prudent person is always discerning, like, what's the end that I want in this situation? What's the end of my life? And I make decisions always based on that final end. So it's right reason in action. So I made a decision, and it's so powerful, St. Thomas Aquinas says, that if you're in a group of people, you don't know what to do in a given situation, you can just go to the person who you think is the holiest. You can say, what do you think we should do? And whatever that person says, that's what you should do. Isn't that incredible? Like you can so make yourself this kind of person, a prudent person. Okay. The next one is justice. Justice is the moral virtue that consists in the constant and firm will to give their due to God and neighbor. This is kind of fun. St. Thomas Aquinas says, if you were asked the question, why do I go to Mass? Why do I go to church? He says, the virtue of religion falls underneath the virtue of justice. So one of the reasons why you go to church is because it's just. Like God made you, He gave you everything, and so it's fitting that you give Him praise and thanksgiving by worshiping, by going to Mass. But justice gives to each what is due to them. If I find somebody's money, I give that back to them. If somebody commits a crime, they should give the punishment. That's what justice is. Okay. Fortitude, the moral virtue that ensures firmness in difficulties and constancy in the pursuit of the good. St. Augustine says we know that evil exists because we have to have courage, which means it's the opposition you face when you want to do good things. If you've ever tried to fight sin in your life, temptation comes and you have to fight it. And courage allows you to keep going. I remember very clearly when I first went to ASU, I was a freshman, I stayed in the dorms, and on the first day of being living in the dorms, this person got alcohol poisoning. And I remember the RA called us over, and she was in a bathtub. She was curled up in a ball. She was vomiting out of her nose. And he was saying, just kind of like passively, like, well, she's vomiting out of her nose, which means she has alcohol poisoning, so we gotta call DPS, and they're gonna come get her. And I was like, wow, this is college? I wanna go to Chick-fil-A. Okay, so that's my safe spot, right? The next night, I was walking through the dorm, and the door was open, and we lived in a co-ed dorm, and these people, group of college students, were playing strip poker. And I remember just like, is this real? Is this really what's happening right now in my life? And I remember thinking, college is going to be harder than I thought, as far as like seeking holiness. And the virtue by which you keep going in the right direction even when it's difficult is courage. Right? Even though I face opposition, I keep going. So I want to pray for courage, Lord, keep me on the right path. And then lastly is temperance, which is the moral virtue that moderates the attraction of pleasures and provides balance in the use of created goods. It's sometimes called moderation or sobriety. So, very simply, I want to use all the created things insofar as they help me get to heaven. That's it. How much food should I eat? Well, when I eat too much food, I feel sick. Or if I don't eat enough food, like if I just fast too much where I don't have enough energy to do my daily duty, well then I'm fasting too much or too little. So I'll eat the right amount of food, that's temperance, to be able to fulfill what I need to do. Right? So I'll use things insofar as they help me attain my true end. Y'all follow that? Okay, now we'll move on to the theological virtues. To get to the theological virtues, I want to tell you a story about a teenage girl. And she's sitting on the ground like this, and she's calling her son to her because he's learning how to walk. And he's 1 year old. And she's like this, yes you are, yes you are, yes you are. And her 1 year old son, he has that cute 1 year old like big drunk baby walk. Sit up down. Right? And so he's kind of like stumbling, and then finally he falls. So here's my question. Who's moving towards who, and why did the one-year-old child fall? Now I know what you're thinking, one of you out there, you're a physics major, and you know that all motion is relative to another specific point. So in other words, at that specific time, the child and the mom are traveling at about 67,000 miles an hour on planet Earth around the sun. In fact, both of them are booking it through the universe. And the Earth, 23.5 degrees on its axis, is spinning at about 1,000 miles an hour. Wow. Why did the child fall? Well, because everything in the universe has a gravitational pull on everything else. The Earth, of course, has more mass than that little child, so it's always constantly pulling on it, and eventually it loses its balance, and it gets pulled down the ground. Of course. But the reason why the Earth is traveling at 67,000 miles around the sun, the reason why it's spinning about 1,000 miles an hour on its axis, the reason why the law of gravity is being held in it being at every moment, is because that child is holding all of those laws into being at every moment. Because that child is God. Now you might be thinking, that's crazy. Close, that's Christmas. Or better yet, it's probably the Annunciation. He takes flesh in her womb, right? That's what we believe, right? That God takes flesh and dwells among us. I was recently in the Holy Land. It's astonishing to walk streets and know Jesus of Nazareth walked this street. God took flesh and dwelt among us. He breathed the air and he walked the streets that he built and made out of nothing. Isn't it funny to think about? Jesus was a carpenter and somebody must have came into his shop one day and be hey, can you make me a dresser? And he's like, sure. Are you any good at making stuff? And he's like, yeah, pretty good. I made you, sucker. What'd you say? Nothing. Jesus is not snarky. That's why it's funny. He doesn't say things like that. Okay. So, one of the catechism says that one of the reasons for the incarnation is that we could become partakers of the divine nature. We could become like God, which is why St. Gregory of Nyssa says the goal of a virtuous life is to become like God. No matter how brilliant Aristotle was, no matter how virtuous you could become, he didn't realize that our true end was that we could become godlike. We could become divine. That God took on what we had, human nature, so that he could give us what he has, which is divine nature. That is so astonishing. Imagine if you saw somebody growing wings, over a year. So one day, you're just talking to them, and you just see this weird thing on their shirt. What is that's weird. And then later, you see these twitchy things. What is going on? And then later, they just cut them out, and you see these little wings coming out. They're like, holy crap. And then they just get bigger and bigger until one day, 3 months later, he's like this. It's astonishing. That dude grew wings. Wow. Okay. Well, if you grow wings, you become like a bird. You become bird-like. But if you learn to love, you become like God. You become God-like. That's astonishing. It's actually much more amazing to learn how to love than to learn how to fly or to grow wings. You can become like a bird, or you can become like God, right? And my favorite author, his name is G.K. Chesterton, he said a slow miracle is no less impressive than a fast one. So he said if you saw a guy running across the sky, or if you saw a guy slowly walking across the sky, it's no less impressive. If you saw a guy walking across the sky, you're like, oh my goodness, that guy's walking in the sky! And somebody's like, yeah, but he's kind of slow. If he was jogging, I'd be like, do it, bro. But he's walking across the sky. Not impressed. So obviously it's a miraculous thing. So he says the life of God in our souls is always a miracle. It's a miraculous thing. So we talked about the moral virtues, prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. Now the theological virtues, they're all called infused. Come from the Latin word meaning to pour in, because God has to give them to you. They're poured into your life. Okay? So of course they are faith, hope, and charity, or faith, hope, and love. So faith is the virtue by which we believe everything that God has revealed to us. And it's guaranteed on the truth of God himself. Because God revealed it, and he's God, we can take his word for it. Faith is the virtue by which I believe everything God has revealed, that the church teaches. Hope is the virtue by which we desire the kingdom of heaven and eternal life as our happiness, placing our trust in Christ's promises, and relying not on our own strength, but on the help of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Real quick, the difference between hope and optimism, if you hear a State of the Union address by the president, he tells you about our problems, got all these problems. And then he's like, we should be optimistic because Americans are all these things. Right? Optimism is based on us. Yeah, we got problems, but we're pretty good. Hope is based on God. Nothing is impossible with God. That's what the angel says to Mary. Nothing is impossible for God. So even in a situation that's very bleak, even in the human arena, we say, ooh, I don't know if that doesn't look good. There's not a lot of natural strength or power or resources in that situation. We can always have hope. It's not based on humans, it's based on God, His promises to us. And lastly, love is the theological virtue by which we love God above all things for His own sake and our neighbor as ourselves for the love of God. So, in other words, to love another person is to will their good. It's to will their good, to will the good of the other as other. Now, to go back to the moral virtues now, check this out. Because all the moral virtues are based in the theological virtues, because how can I be prudent and seek my final end according to wisdom, unless I know what my final end is? And Jesus has revealed my final end, which is to be with Him forever in heaven. So if I really want to be happy, then my prudence has to be transformed by the theological virtues. So that the moral virtues have to be transformed by the theological virtues. So you can have like a supernatural prudence. I said all that to say this. Sometimes the most prudent thing to do is to get shot in the face. There's a saying. His name is Saint Jose Sanchez del Rio. He died as a teenager during the Cristeros Revolution, defending the church. Now at one point, somebody said to him in the middle of this war, if you renounce your faith, we will set you free. And he said, I am your enemy, shoot me. What's the end? What do I want? I want heaven. I want happiness. I want eternal life. What's prudence? It's right reason and action. So that I retain every action I make towards my true end. I want to go to heaven. Are you offering the martyrdom? Shoot me, right? That seems shocking to us, right? But that's what can happen. The moral virtues can be transformed by the theological virtues. I would propose to you in college that you should seek to become a master of virtue. Why? Because you want to be happy. Because the train must free when it's on its tracks. Because the sunflowers must free when it's following the sun. And you are made by God, and you are made for God. You can practice the moral virtues by repeated excellence, right? If I want to get up earlier, I get better by getting up earlier. I do that over and over and over again until some point it becomes easy. And you're like, Father Dan, it's like 8:30, you're like, oh, I'm exhausted. Love it. Okay. That's how virtue works, right? And I'm going to close by just talking about love. Let's talk about virtue, happiness, and love. Ultimately, your heart was made by love and to love. And virtue gives you the ability to love, and to love committedly, to live and to love, to go all in. And there are so many things that militate against love in our culture. Things like hookup culture, things like, when we do studies of young people, now they so not believe in marriage anymore that less and less people are getting married. They're just not getting married at all, right? Because it's kind of like it's a sham. Like, love doesn't really last. So I'm not even going to get married at all to even pretend like it, right? Why is that a bad thing? Well, I'll tell you why. There's a theologian, his name is Hans Urs von Balthasar, and he said, every act of love has the inner form of a vow, and in the end, even the freedom to choose becomes the enemy to love. What does that mean? Every act of love has the inner form of a vow. What's a vow? It's a promise. I promise myself to this other person. And love, and he says, in the end, even the freedom to choose the enemy to love. So when you love someone, you want to be all in. That's just the nature of love. You're not going to hear love songs like, girl, I love you every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Like, you're not going to hear a song like that, right? Love songs say things like, I love you for 1,000 years. I love you for 1,000 more, right? And it's just, that's how love is. It's all in, all the time. And Hans Urs von Balthasar says, in the end, even the freedom to choose becomes an enemy to love. What does that mean? It means that if a man were to fall in love with a woman, and he were to get down one day on one knee, and he would say, will you please marry me? What he doesn't want her to say is, well, don't you want to keep your options open? There's a lot of other fish in the sea. Have you checked Tinder recently? Now, if he was on his knee asking that woman to marry him, he would experience that as pain. Why? Because I don't want the freedom to choose anymore. I have this gift called freedom from God, but my freedom is fulfilled in love. It's like a train. I'm made for tracks. A sunflower, I'm made for the sun. And so our hearts are built for committed love. And no matter how many things in our culture militate against that, at the end of the day, our hearts are always going to be made for committed love. And when we try to accept a culture that doesn't think it's possible, well then we're writing ourselves a check to sadness, to heartbreak, to despair, because we're made for committed love. Why is virtue so important? Because it trains me, it habituates me to love God wholly and other people wholly. Like with my whole heart, with everything I am. So when I live virtue, when I meet somebody, like I'm called to the vocation of marriage, I can say, I've loved you before I ever met you, because I've been preparing to love you. And all these little actions in my life, I've been sacrificing so that I know how to give myself totally to another person. And of course, obviously, that's just a microcosm of wanting myself totally with God one day. Amen? Paul Claudel said this: youth was not made for pleasure, but for heroism. And I want to close by talking about the transfiguration. In Matthew's Gospel, I'm going to read it to you. Here it is. This is Matthew chapter 17. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, conversing with him. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud cast a shadow over them. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell prostrate and were very much afraid. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise and do not be afraid. And when the disciples raised their eyes, they saw no one else but Jesus alone. As they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus charged them, Do not tell the vision to anyone, till the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I think it's easy to miss that part when he says, don't tell anybody about this vision until after I'm risen from the dead. In other words, they've already been to the brutality of the crucifixion. And so what's happening in the transfiguration? Well, in some ways we can say Jesus is showing them, do you want to know what I'm going to do to you? Like, if you trust me with your life, if you walk the path of the cross, if you grow in the moral virtues and the theological virtues, do you want to see what you look like? And when he reveals himself, it's transfigured, right? It's brighter than anything I'd ever seen. That's what God wants to do with us. And just like that little boy who looked at that sculptor and said, how did you know that lion was in that block of marble? For all of us, the way that God looks at us, God the Father, is he looks at us with love, and he wants to make an incredible masterpiece out of our lives. And who he's holding in his hand is the cross of his son, Jesus. To chip away, that's what virtue does. Chip away all the weakness in our life. It chips away our sin, and it gets us to be beautiful as God made us. Amen? Let us pray. Jesus, we thank you for the gift of this day, the gift of faith. We thank you that you're not only with us, but you're for us. Please help us to have an increase of faith and hope and love in our own lives. That we would seek you as our final end. And that we would have a desire to be heroic for you this year. We pray this, Jesus, through your most holy name. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.